Welcome to Twice 5 Miles Radio, fertile ground for conversations worth listening to. I'm your host, James Navé. Today I am in Taos, New Mexico, and this week I'm participating in an Imaginative Storm writing workshop series. We have 8 people with us working on their writing, their storytelling, and their strategy around how they want to get their work out. One of our participants, Rebecca Jarmas, has agreed to join me for this show. Rebecca is an author. She's written a children's book on the subject of migraine headaches, and she shows up every day. She does the work, and she's here to work on her strategy around how to get her material out into the public. I am intrigued by migraine headaches because I've suffered from migraine headaches over the years, so I'm very curious about the subject. So let's turn to our conversation. Rebecca and I are sitting in a sunroom, and here's how it happens. You and I are sitting in this beautiful white room made out of adobe at the Hacienda del Sol in Taos, New Mexico. The afternoon sun's coming through. Springtime is emerging in Taos in the high Rockies, 7,500 feet above sea level, something like that. Air's a little thin. We're here working in a writing gathering. Maybe you could call it a workshop. Maybe we call it a gathering. You were here last year. We've been working together quite a bit over the last couple of years, interacting with our Imaginative Storm writing circles, writing prompts, writing gatherings. I would like for you to just tell me why this kind of work, this kind of exploration is important to you. Where does the meaning lie for you in this work of writing, communicating, exploring the things you hope to say, need to say, things you must say?
Good afternoon, Navé. It's great to be back in this space with you. It is a beautiful adobe house, and it's nice to be surrounded by all the prints and the past and the history of this room. And it's good to be back with another group of writers and with you and Allegra Houston as well, working further and deeper towards the kind of writing that I'm loving doing. And as you know, I have a Substack that I've been working on now for almost a year and a half, working on a children's book, which should be coming out later this year, and also a novel. And I've come back to this place because this is where I gain my nourishment to be able to do the kind of work that I'm doing on what I would say is more productive work, work that I want to put out into the public. Writers, creators of all kinds, I think, need to be fed. And we need to go to a well. And the Mabel Longhand Dodge House, I should say, is a well, a beautiful well. And these workshops that Allegra and Navé, that the two of you run, are well springs of inspiration and knowledge and camaraderie and a building of a community that I found not only in the weekly writing workshops that you run, but I had such an inspirational experience last year that I wanted to come back and repeat it this year.
Building of the community. You mentioned Mabel Dodge. She gathered here at Hacienda del Sol, and while she was building the large house she eventually moved to, and the room we're in right now is the room where she sat, had conversations with characters like D.H. Lawrence and Ansel Adams and other people who came through because she was here. Bit of a maven back in the day. Community. Why is community so important to writers? And we do go back, even though Mabel Dodge is not here. We're in the same room having another conversation like she did. Community. Talk about community.
So this can be an intimidating cast of characters if you let it, but it can also be a space where you just let the creativity just flow through you. Writing is a very solitary experience, and you can get caught up in your own mind and your own stories, and you can let it defeat you. You can get stuck in it. It is very helpful to share that experience with other people who are going through it, and you find the camaraderie in it helps you not only become a better writer, but a more secure person, and you become more confident in your writing, and you become more validated in your writing, I think, in a way that you can't become from people that maybe in your family or your friends that aren't in the creative arts arena. So the sense of community is probably one of the biggest takeaways, I think, from joining workshops like this.
And you mentioned security. Why is that important? And how does writing help you to develop security? And what kind of security are you referencing when you talk about security?
Creativity is a gift to others. In order to give truly, you have to become vulnerable yourself. Vulnerability is not something that people give away willingly in today's society. There's a lot of criticism and judgment. One has to be willing to open themselves up to that. You have to have a backstop to that. Otherwise, you can be eaten alive out there if you don't have a way to process that, and if you don't have a support group, a blanket around you to be able to counteract any criticism or judgment. And I can tell you that not all of that criticism and judgment comes from outside. Probably the biggest source of it comes from within. And that's another reason that I've come back to this workshop, because here we learn how not to be so harsh with ourselves. We learn that to be gentle, to be accepting, to be open, and once we do that, then the creativity flows even stronger.
So you're speaking from some experience around criticism and judgment from the internal point of view. As you've done the written work and the creative work, which you've been focusing on now for some time, how have you noticed the criticism and judgment changing? Has it transformed into something that's an asset rather than a liability?
Yes. In the beginning, the criticism would be paralyzing. I can't tell you how many files I have on my computer of unfinished work. This is not good enough. Nobody would ever read this. It doesn't deserve to be finished. Stupid idea, those sorts of things, just chastising myself left and right. Since I've built a community of writers and since I've done some self-work on self-criticism and my own reflections, and gotten a better perspective and just wisdom with age, I think, I've, reassigned this critic to step aside and let the creativity flow without judgment first, and realize, like Navé and Allegra teach in these workshops, that there's a time for the judgmentalism to come in a productive way after the creative work is finished. And then there's a time to edit. And I never have to put the pressure on myself to publish anything or put anything out, ever. Or I can do it when I'm ready.
When you say paralysis, everybody listening has experienced it one way or another. I get scared, I hold back, I'm not able to move in a supple way. For you, how does paralysis express itself? And then what have you done to switch that out into something more mobile?
Well, for me, I suffer from migraine, so paralysis can manifest as migraine, which can can last for weeks, or 12 days, I think is my record. So paralysis can derail me in that way. Paralysis can also just put me off writing for long periods of time. I put, manuscripts in the drawer and just focused on other things and just figured I'm not meant to be a writer and I should go back to doing economics or something else that I was, better trained for. And that is a real disservice to myself, because I remember as an 11-year-old promising myself that one day I was going to be a writer, and that not only was I going to write, but I was going to publish books. So every time that I said that I put that dream aside and put those manuscripts in the drawer, I was dishonoring that 11-year-old. So you have to take that into account. And, now I'm not that 11-year-old anymore, and I still have the power and the ability and the desire to fulfill her dream. So I'm really happy that I found a way to move forward past the paralysis.
Well, I love the idea of fulfilling the dream. I know that because of your migraine afflictions, or affliction, depending on how you want to say it, you have been called or driven, or you must write about that, and you generated a children's book about migraines, and it's for children, but I wonder if the 11-year-old in you appreciates that you wrote that book for children.
So let me help you with some terminology first. We suffer from migraine attacks, or we have migraine disease. We don't have migraines, so it's migraine. And yes, it is a book that I couldn't not write. When I was a child, doctors didn't know that children could suffer from migraine. So my parents didn't believe that I could have so many headaches with vomiting and nauseousness. I was sent home from elementary school more times than I can remember. What I do remember is being sent to the nurse's office back when they had such things, and laying on the Pepto-Bismol pink couches with a bucket nearby and waiting for my parents to pick me up. And the stigma of the other children wondering why I got out of class, and the missing out of birthday parties and sports and social activities, which continues to this day. Even though there are excellent drugs for migraine, I still can have up to 20 migraine days a month. So I took on a course in migraine advocacy, and my graduation project came to me instantly that I should write a children's book about migraine. So it's a picture book. I'm not an illustrator, so I I found an illustrator walking dogs on the beach, believe it or not, and she did a wonderful job, and we found a publisher, and I'm really excited going through that process of finally getting that 11-year-old off my back, let's say.
Well, I was 11 myself at one time, and I was at Venable Elementary School, and I remember suffering greatly with heavy lifting migraine headaches, the pounding. Fortunately, I didn't have the same problems that you did in terms of the headaches returning, but I do remember that, and even to this day, I don't have migraine headaches, but I do get the blurring of vision that precedes the migraine headaches. So fortunately, I don't suffer like you did, but I have a little ring in my voice when I say migraine, because I know what it is, and it's debilitating when it happens, and it's I guess you could say even terrifying, perhaps. I suppose you get used to it. It's not as terrifying. You're going to live through it. Your children's book, it's about migraine. Or how are we saying it now? It's about migraine attacks?
You can call it migraine attacks, yes.
Migraine attacks. I've always just called it migraines because I've always been so familiar with it because it just always floated around in my head.
Well, the migraine headaches groups have rephrased it recently, so you would have been correct. You would have been correct, but they're trying to change the way that they talk about migraine.
Yeah, I never found it to be all that socially a problem for me. I just got over it and then I moved on.
I won't be a stickler with you, Navé, about it.
I'm just learning.
I'm just putting it out there.
I think it's great. I didn't
being
know
an
there
ambassador.
I didn't know there was a language shift at all.
There's a language
I
shift.
had no idea. I was clueless, ignorant, if you will, until this moment. So
Okay.
now I'm a little more aware. Golly.
So what you describe is what would be included in the phase called the aura. And what the children's book does is it personifies the phases of the migraine into characters that children can understand. So I have a character called Madame Aura. And it gives the children a language to talk to their parents about what they're experiencing. Whereas I did not have the language to talk to my parents. It was just I was vomiting and I had a headache.
Could you give us an example of how what you're able to offer the children as language that will help them communicate this to their parents? What would you say?
So I'll tell you what was the underlying reason for writing the book is I would like for, and this is my underlying goal, and I've talked to the publisher about trying to achieve this, and we'll see if we can get it done. I would like for when children go with their parents to a pediatric neurologist who is one that would treat a child with migraine, when the doctor hands the parents a sheaf of papers describing, treatments, symptoms, medications, this and that they can hand the child my book. So the child has something to look at to help them at their level, which would be for 4 to 8-year-olds, understand what it is they're feeling. And the book is called Mabel and Her Bright, Noisy, Prickly, Dizzy Migraine. And it's a long, silly name, but there's a character for each one of those feelings, physical sensations.
When children have migraines, what are some of the things that emerge for them socially that holds them back? I know you've mentioned a few of them, but elaborate a bit more on that, because this is really amazing. And how many children have this problem?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's an astounding number of children, and it's an astounding number of people worldwide that have migraine. It's one of the more debilitating diseases, and it gets very little attention. One of the ways that it affects children is it affects them in school a lot, and there are some lobbying efforts by different migraine advocacy groups to try to get accommodations for children in schools, for example, to give them extra time to complete assignments or to allow them to do their work in low light areas because bright lights really bother us. There's also trouble with kids because they, as I mentioned earlier, aren't able to participate in sports. They can't always commit to a practice schedule. And the problem when you have migraine is you never know when they're going to come on you. So it's really hard, even for myself, trying to commit to volunteer activities that are regular. I can't do that because I don't know if I'm going to feel well enough. Children have, they have a lot of issues social issues because they have to say no to birthday parties, or they've said yes to birthday parties and at the last minute they can't go. And after a while, children stop inviting them, because they're no-shows, and it's very difficult too as a parent to be able to help your child through these situations. It's not fair, and it takes a long time sometimes to recover from the migraines. You have to be in a dark room and your siblings don't understand, and it's an invisible disease is the problem. You're not on crutches, you don't have a bandage, Nobody can see it. They think you're faking.
People listening might be thinking, okay, fine, interesting, headache. And that's what people do think. Can you give us a description of the arc of a heavy lifting migraine? How does it play out? How does it start? Do you have words that could describe the pain and the feeling that happens when it really settles in, and then how it goes away? You said you had a 12-day migraine. That's a long flight.
So there's kind of a subtle beginning to it, which is the aura. Not everyone has like the visual aura where they see spots. I do not have the visual aura. The type of aura that I have is I have a numbness on the left side of my face. That's when I know I'm going to be in for it. But I also have, and sometimes my husband notices this first, a drooping of the eyes and a slurring of my speech. Some people can be mistaken for being drunk because of the slurring of the speech. Sometimes you have, it's called, fogginess, brain fog. And sometimes this happens as much as a day or two ahead of time, and you don't know why you can't think, you can't remember, you think something's the matter with you, but it's the migraine coming on. And they're finding out that you used to look for triggers. I had chocolate, or I drank too much wine, or, I was out in the sun too much, or I didn't have enough water. But what the latest research is saying is it's probably a stacking of things. It wasn't any one thing. So, but once I have the paralysis on the side of my face, I know that I'm going to be in for it. That's when I usually take the abortive medication that I have, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't work. You have tearing of the eyes, and I have nauseousness comes on. Then I no longer have the vomiting that happens a lot of times in children, but I have severe nauseousness. And then the pain comes, the head pain comes, and I get it on the left side of my head, and it's relentless, and many, many times I work through it. Sometimes the medication dampens it. Most times it doesn't get rid of it. Sometimes the medication doesn't touch it, and it's brutal. And there are some days when I have to go to bed in a dark room, and I'll sleep for hours and hours until I just have to wait till it goes away. And the best way to describe as the migraine leaves is anyone who's had a hangover. They call it a headache hangover. It slowly leaves. It just slowly leaves. You feel worn out. You still can't think. Your thoughts are slow. It feels like you've gone to battle, and you have.
So now that you have written this book, it's moving its way to public, a presentation. How do you feel about the completion of it? As I'm listening to you, I'm pulled into the story. You're giving me information I've never had before. I sort of knew about it. And even though I do have abortive migraine pills in my wallet right now for when my visual thing starts to happen, it seems to arrest the headache. So I'm not that afflicted by it, but I don't want to take the chance of not taking those abortive pills because I don't want that headache to be there. Because in my experience, it's like having an anvil bouncing around in my head when it comes, and it's heavy in that way, weighted, and there's nowhere to turn. And once you have it, there's no way to get rid of it until it just goes away. So how are you feeling about the success of finishing this?
I feel so good that I was able to turn something that has been such a burden in my life into maybe something to help families. I really think that communication between parents and their children on this topic. A parent who does not suffer from migraine would have a difficult time, I think, understanding what the child is going through. And I hope the book helps them understand better. And to imagine the spark of communication between a young child and their parent, to have the parent recognize in some way, maybe. And I really, really, for me to think like a child, and I have grandchildren of this age, so it was a little bit easier for me to picture who the audience is. But for me to drop down in my adult self and find the child who's experiencing these symptoms and make them into characters, it was challenging. It was challenging for me to do that, but I think I got it just right.
And you have also, while you've been dealing with this lifelong problem with your migraine headaches, you've had a successful career in finance. You've now moved into a career as a writer, and you've been able to do all of this dancing around this chronic illness. Now that you are writing, does the drive that you have to write help you balance your way through the chronic illness when it hits, the migraine when it hits? What's the relationship between the drive and the sense of success you're having as a writer and continuing to keep your momentum up? Some people would just give up. If you had 12 days of a migraine headache, you'd just want to crawl into the universe and vanish. How do you keep up that momentum?
Except when I have like one of these red alarm migraine days, which I only have maybe one of those a month. Writing, I don't feel the migraine when I'm writing. I can escape away from it. I can set it aside and just write. It allows me freedom from the migraine when I write.
I think I'm hearing you say writing is medicine.
Okay, we'll go with that. I like that idea.
Can you play a little bit more with that idea, since you've never thought of it before, obviously, till now?
I think that we can use maybe different parts of our brain to take care of ourselves. I think that we can definitely attend to different parts of our brain and shut down parts of our brain that are not functioning very well for certain parts of our day. Say you sit down and rest over there and I'm going to work over here. Maybe that's what happens. It's not that I don't feel it. It's that I don't focus on it.
You mentioned you have grandchildren, so you're revealing you're no longer 28. You started your writing career later in life.
Yes.
How does that factor in? How does your age help you understand how to move through this new career?
I wouldn't have been ready to write when I was 28. I did some like financial writing back then, a totally different kind of writing, but I would not have been ready to write. I wouldn't have had the perspective of what I have now. I wouldn't have had insights into people, and I wouldn't have had understanding of the way things work. I wouldn't have had insight into myself to put into the characters. That's probably the best answer. I wouldn't have had insight into myself to put into the characters I create.
And has the writing process given you strategies on how to find more insight into the characters? Does it feed that quest?
Does the writing process feed the quest? Yes. And that all goes back to community, because I want to share with other writers and learn what their process is, because I don't have all the answers, and there are many different ways to approach the quest. And everybody has an interesting story in the way they approach their quest, and they bring different backgrounds, and that's fascinating. I mean, there are, priests and attorneys and doctors and finance people, and all of us bring our different life experiences to the way we approach the writing process, and I can learn from all of that and incorporate it into my own process.
Writing is something you do alone until you come to a workshop like this and we sit in a circle and have conversations like this. In some ways, this conversation we're having now is part of the workshop that we're in. And I am wondering about the public aspect of the writer. Emily Dickinson put all of her writing, or at least that's the story goes, she put the writing under the bed and her sister found it and published it. She didn't seem to really care about people reading her work. That may or may not be true. You are publishing. You've spent some time developing the novel that you've written. You've got that finished. You've got your children's book finished. You've got to go out in the public. And one of the ways I know that you've gone out in the public, you started a Substack a while back, and you've been presenting yourself publicly with the Substack. And now those people who are out there listening may or may not know what a Substack is. It's a very productive way of getting your writing out into the public. So I would like for you to spend some time telling us about Substack, how it works for you. What is it? Why did you choose to do it? You've talked about building up courage around it. What does that mean for you? Momentum? Do tell.
So I have been publishing a Substack under a pen name Alice W Meadows for, it'll be 2 years in August. And that came out of the weekly writing group that I have participated in with Allegra and Navé. And I should say that gave me the courage to publish some of the writings that I've been doing. And at first I felt around a bit about what I was going to do. I didn't really know what I was going to write about. I think that's a common story. I started writing in the beginning about the writing process. I put a few pieces in there about the migraine experience. Then I started writing, drawing a bit on my background as an economist, and some commentary on society or politics, a little bit, trying not to stray too far into that, but also topics on morality and humility and that sort of thing that we pulled from our that I pulled from my economics background. And usually the topics pop into my head. It's something that it's like a bee, it gets in you and it bothers me. And, I'm like, no, I don't want to write about that. And I start in my journal and I list a few topics that I want to write for the week. And it's this one I swatting away, and it's just, okay, I'm going to write about this one, I guess. So I write it now bi-weekly so that I can make time to write the novel that I've been working on, which Navé mentioned, which has come about because of another big event in my life when I'm not suffering from a migraine. In 2022, the place where I lived was inundated by the floodwaters and the winds of Hurricane Ian. So my husband and I evacuated the island we lived on for 9 months. And I'm writing a novel that centers around that event. So I have what I call the zero draft finished of that. Another reason that I've come back to this workshop to do a little bit of work on that.
Staying with Substack for just a minute, more people listening may or may not know what Substack is. It's a clever name. I like it. I have a Substack of my own that I enjoy putting out some of my written work on. Tell us what Substack is. Why is it something that works, and why would you choose that over just an email to your friends? Maybe using Constant Contact or MailChimp as a newsletter? What's the scoop on Substack?
Yes, I need to pick that up. Thanks for the reminder. Substack is a long form blog, I guess I would call it, newsletter type blog. I'm new to kind of social media, so that was my segue into social media. And I liked it because the pieces that I read on there were more thoughtful, I think, than on some other platforms. And intellectual but accessible, I would say. And the ones that I write are maybe like a 1,000 words, which I know are too long, but maybe 500 to 1,000 words. I don't know much more to say about Substack other than it's very accessible, and it's become more and more popular, I think, and a lot of writers participate in it. And it's just an easy way to publish on a range of topics. And I do get a lot of my news from there. And I also get a lot of my writing advice and information from there.
What I understand of Substack, and one of the reasons why a lot of people use it, especially folks who have developed a mailing list. A lot of people don't have a mailing list. They just start publishing and have folks sign up. You can put as many emails into the Substack database as you like. If you have 1 million, you can put 1 million in there, and there's never a charge. Unlike Constant Contact, MailChimp, if you have 45,000 emails on MailChimp, it costs you about $400 a month to send emails out through that system. Substack doesn't charge a thing, and there's a donation button on Substack. And if anybody decides to support you, then Substack takes 10%. So that's how Substack gets its money. So that's, and it's also interactive. It's interactive, I think, too.
It is interactive.
Make
it
notes
is.
and share and do things that Facebook does, but you don't have to deal with all of the Facebooky stuff that Facebook requires of you.
Yes, and I haven't gotten so much into the business end, and my publisher is going to be on me about this, about getting more into the businessy end as the children's book comes out with email lists and all of that. But thank you. I appreciate all that information because I'm going to have to deal with that myself.
And as you are moving forward in this workshop, what are some of the things about the experiences that we've had today that work for you? What does this experience look like for you? Describe it. I mean, I'm part of it too, but I have a different sense of it. So,
well, maybe I should start by saying what this experience means and give kind of an example of what a writing exercise looks like in one of Navé and Allegra's workshops. We're all about putting the rational mind to rest for a moment while we let the imaginative mind go to work. And an easy way to do that is to take a prompt, and we often start with a visual prompt. Today we were treated to an actual 3-dimensional one, but it's often a photograph or a painting. And we are each we're set with a 2-minute timer to write down whatever pops into our head, a short phrase or a word. At the end of the 2 minutes, we're each asked to submit 2 or 3 words, and we generate a community list of words. And then we have a little discussion maybe about how the experience was, about looking at the item and generating the list of words. And then another timer is set for 5 or 10 minutes. The words are read aloud. This is what's important. The words have to be read aloud because something about resonating within our bodies about taking ownership of these words. It's very important that we read our writing aloud. So after the word list is read, we set another timer for 5 or 10 minutes, and we write. And we write freehand always. We don't use a computer. There's something about the contact of the hand against the paper that connects us emotionally to our writing. And at the end of 10 minutes, we take turns reading our writing, as I said. Something happens, even if you think you wrote utter crap. When you read your writing, you're going to amaze yourself. And you're going to amaze everybody else, too, at how good it was. It's magic. I can't really explain how it happens, but it happens every single time. And I've been doing this for 2 years. So if you think you can't write, you need to do the Imaginative Storm workshops, because you'll be able to write after that. You'll change your mind about your writing. And so we do. We go around, we read our writing. This is not the kind of a workshop where you say you should have said thus and not them or something like that. We're not criticizing form or format, choice of words or topic, or you could have done this or that better. Everything, if anything is said, it's in a supportive vein. It's an exploration of language. It's an exploration of self, and it's an exploration maybe of a topic that you're working on, or maybe it's not.
We're here live. We talk about all kinds of things. And on Saturday morning, Allegra and I host the Imaginative Storm gathering. I'm starting to call it the Imaginative Storm Writing Salon. I love the idea of the writing salon.
That's a great title.
Yeah, I love that. It only lasts an hour, and in the course of the hour, we write for 10 minutes. And you've been a member of that group now for quite a while. We've been doing it 5 years. Talk to me about your experience on those Zoom calls. I'm there all the time. I show up, I facilitate it, but I don't have an experience like you have on it. So how does that inform you and keep you moving as a writer?
So I can tell you, first of all, it's been wonderful because several of the women who are on the Zoom calls are here at the live workshop. So it's been like old home week and meeting friends. It's amazing how the vibe on the Zoom call has carried over to the in-person workshop. But it's quite a large group. It's maybe 30 people on Saturday mornings. So we do the same process that I just described, but we break into smaller groups to read our writing, just to give it, some justice, and just because of time constraints, so everybody gets to read. But my experience there has been some of the writing you can take and actually take it forward and do something more with it. Not all of it is going to be, a diamond. Some of it is diamond in the rough, and some of it is, that was fun. I think all of it is fun. Sometimes you'll get a phrase that's a gem. Sometimes you'll get unstuck on something else that you're working on. Sometimes it's throwaway writing. That's what Navé and Allegra call it. Well, how can you expect to do something, brilliant in 10 minutes? Well, often you do. It's amazing. And they have something on their website called The Circle on the imaginativestorm.com. It's The Circle. So you can publish your 10-minute piece on The Circle. Other people can look at it, comment on it. So there you go. You can be a published writer in 10 minutes.
Another thing that I enjoy doing, and we've done that today, you and I are sitting in the room where we just finished. We have the salon gathering. Again, I call it the Imaginative Storm Writing Salon on Saturday. I'm starting to call it more and more. After our hour of focused work, writing, reading, recording a little bit of what we all do, we spend 45 minutes after the top of the hour just having a salon conversation, just like we did today. Why do you think writers and creatives getting together just to talk about whatever they feel like talking about, how does that inform your process or everybody's process?
I think because as we're writing, we have a lot of questions that come up that you can't just look up or do chat GPT on. We don't have, not all of us have MFAs. We're all coming at things from different places. It's just nice to say, I was wondering about this. Is anybody else wondering about this? Or what do you think about that? Or, and talk to somebody who understands or maybe has been through the same experience, or talk to somebody who's maybe maybe ahead of you in the publishing process that can give you a hand up.
Yeah, in our salon conversation today, one of the participants, Diana, asked about editing. How do you edit? And I loved where the conversation went, because we concluded editing is something that has to happen based on what you would like for the material that you're generating to do. So if I want somebody to buy something, my editing skews in the direction of copywriting. If I want someone to just enjoy what I've written because that person's a member of my family, the editing is different. Talk a little bit about your editing process as we move toward the end of our time together.
So I can't totally shut down my finance background, so I usually start with structure, making sure, not spelling and that sort of thing, but making sure that I haven't overused words, making sure I don't have too many long sentences, too many short sentences. And once I have the structure right, then I'm wanting to make sure that the content is what I intended it to be. I tend to make outlines, make sure that I followed the outline, make sure that I have the purpose that I have, the material is for who I intended it to be. But at the end, I step back and I try to make sure that, am I speaking to the reader that I intended it to be, but am I humble enough? When I'm giving, I'm making myself vulnerable in giving this writing to this person, but am I being humble in doing that? Am I not like grandstanding, or someone said the word showboating? Am I not showing off? Am I not using grandiose, wording? Am I talking to them, on their level, on a level they can understand?
Say a little bit more about humble. What does that mean? And how do you stay humble while at the same time getting very excited about the quality of your work, where you want to go, the importance of the work? So how do you keep humble while at the same time acknowledging the largesse of what you do?
When I release a piece of writing, I want the reader to feel like they're not alone, that they're understood, that someone else has experienced something similar to what they have experienced, and that if it's an obstacle that they're facing, that they too can overcome it.
What are some of the obstacles that you faced that being humble helped you overcome?
I faced the obstacle of coming from a dysfunctional family, of being on my own when I was 16. I faced a lot of health obstacles. I was in a car accident when I was 30, which has led to 4 spine surgeries. And I've had lifelong chronic pain from migraine. I mean, those are 3 right there that have not set me back yet.
So as you move forward in this work, how can people find you? What do you plan to do next? What's the focus?
So I'm building my social presence. I have a website, a brand new website. It's Alice W Meadows, alicewmeadows.com. It's brand new. And you can find me on Substack, alicewmeadows.substack.com.
Alice W. Meadows is not Rebecca. Where does Alice W. Meadows come from?
Interesting question. It took me a long time to pick a pen name. Alice W. is after Alice in Wonderland. Lewis Carroll suffered from migraine. Some of the symptoms of migraine can be hallucinations. So many of his characters could be explained by hallucinations, some might say. So they thought maybe some of the characters of Alice in Wonderland were due to migraine attacks. And Meadows. My middle name is Lee, L-E-A, which means meadow.
Well, I never thought of migraines in Alice in Wonderland.
Well, you feel physical symptoms sometimes where your limbs feel larger than life. You feel the tingling, So if I read closely Alice in Wonderland, and I could see how they might be based off of migraine symptoms. Mm-hmm.
And now I'm trying to pull this out of my distant memory. Lewis Carroll was a pen name. Is that correct?
It was, and you're going to ask me what his real name is.
Charles Ludwig Dotson.
That's right. Charles Ludwig Dotson.
Charles Ludwig Dotson. It's not Lewis Carroll. Charles Ludwig Dotson.
That's it.
So you're Rebecca Jarmas.
Yes.
And you're Alice W Meadows.
Yes.
A couple of last words before we say goodbye.
I really appreciate the time that you took to interview me here, Navé, and allowing me to talk about especially the children's migraine book. No matter what I write after this, that's the one that's closest to my heart, and I hope it does some good in the world.
Well, Alice W Meadows and Rebecca Jarmas, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks, Navé.
And there you go, my friends. Thus concludes my conversation with Rebecca Jarmas. I hope you learned something about migraine headaches. I certainly did. I'm glad to be here in this workshop week that Allegra Houston and I are hosting, and the other members of our group are equally as intriguing and interesting, and it's a real thrill to sit in a circle of people and facilitate the conversations. We do some generative writing work, that's true. It's the learning that's shared amongst the group that intrigues me the most. I love to write. I've always written. My goal as a writer is to allow myself to slow down, take it easy, generate something on the page, or lately, dictate, and then take the dictation, put it on the page, and slowly edit it. So I've really gotten into the editing process lately, and I love to edit by speaking aloud. And that's one of the things that happens in our workshop. We write and then we read aloud. And people report that the reading aloud is what really gives the insight. It offers the insight. And I've been doing spoken word for a long time. And years ago, I didn't connect the spoken word to the editing process. Now, I find it to be an essential part of what makes the editing process rich, variable, intriguing, curious. And it's not just sitting there trying to find the place to put the period. It's using the voice, the spoken word voice, as a way of reflecting on what's been applied to the page. And when that happens, insight comes, phrasing comes. The voice is an essential part of my editing process. And if you write, I encourage you to consider using your voice more and more and more, reading aloud more, and especially if you have somebody in front of you to listen. Read it aloud and have somebody listen. And even though the person listening may not be able to give you that much feedback, you will be giving yourself feedback as you speak to the person. So not only will the person that you're reading to be listening, you will be listening to yourself as well. And what pops up comes from more the subconscious sensibilities rather than the intellectual, rational sensibilities. No dispersion on the rational mind. It's a great tool. We use it all the time. Keep it, stay in it, and give it something to work with through your imaginative process. So speaking aloud with a sense of improvisational desire will give you the opportunity to organize things in ways that will be quite unexpected. So I think that's about all I have time to reflect on today. I really appreciate having Rebecca be part of the show, and I look forward to reading her children's book about migraine headaches. And I know the young children between 4 and 8 will appreciate it very, very much, and they will have a new language to express some of the struggles they have around this invisible disease that creates these migraine headaches. So on that note, thank you ever so much for listening to Twice 5 Miles Radio. I'm your host, James Navé. I hope these conversations are worth listening to and remembering. I do believe they are. I certainly find the conversations worth listening to and remembering. That's indeed true. Thank you, Walter Parks, for our theme song, walterparks.com, for more on Walter's music. Thank you, Davine Dial, for managing WPVM-FM in Asheville, Robin Collier and Mike Tilley for doing the same with KCEI Cultural Energy Radio in Taos, New Mexico. If you'd like to reach out to me and tell me more about what you're doing wherever you are in the world, I would love to hear from you. Navé at jamesnavé.com. I think it's important to exchange information back and forth. So if you're listening and you feel moved to send me an email, just to say hi, I'd love to hear from you and be glad to respond back. I do appreciate you listening. And I think that's pretty much it, other than if you'd like to join Allegra and me on our regular Saturday call, 12 to 1 p.m. It's the Imaginative Storm Writing Salon Circle on Zoom. It's just a gathering. It's always free, and we'd love to have people drop in. You can find that link at jamesnavé.com. Navé is spelled Nave. So there you go. I believe that's about it for now. I hope you can come back sometime soon. And until then, I'll catch you on that turnaround somewhere down the line.